Story number 1, The Gas Tank Fireball. Our first story takes us to Tulsa, Oklahoma, 2014. Meet Donald, a 45-year-old mechanic who should have absolutely known better, which makes this story even more tragic. Donald was working in his home garage on a Saturday afternoon, doing some maintenance on an old motorcycle he was restoring. The bike had been sitting unused for years, and the gas tank needed to be cleaned out before he could get it running again. Now, if you know anything about fuel tank maintenance, you know there's a very specific and safe way to do this. You drain the tank completely, let it air out for at least 24 hours to allow all the fumes to dissipate, preferably fill it with water or inert gas, and work in a well-ventilated area with absolutely no ignition sources nearby. Donald knew this. He was a trained mechanic, but he was also impatient and figured he'd take a shortcut. He drained most of the gas from the tank, not all of it, just most of it. He opened the tank cap to let it air out for about 20 minutes. Then he started cleaning the inside with rags and solvent. Here's the critical part. Even when a gas tank is empty, it's not actually empty. It's full of gasoline vapor. And gasoline vapor is actually more flammable than liquid gasoline because it mixes with oxygen to create a perfect explosive mixture. Donald had been working for about 15 minutes when he decided he needed a break. He was a smoker, had been for 20 years. He stepped back from his workbench, reached into his pocket, pulled out his cigarettes, and lit one up. He was standing maybe 3 feet from the open gas tank. The moment that cigarette was lit, the flame ignited the gasoline vapor that had been accumulating in his garage. But it didn't stop there. The vapor trail led directly back to the source, the open gas tank on his workbench. The gas tank exploded. When I say exploded, I mean it caught fire. I mean it detonated like a bomb. The pressure wave blew out the windows of his garage, sent the garage door flying off its tracks, and created a fireball that engulfed the entire 20 by 20 space. Donald was directly in the blast zone. The explosion threw him backward into his tool cabinet. The fireball ignited his clothes, his hair, the solvent he'd been using, and pretty much everything flammable in the garage. His neighbor heard the explosion from 3 houses away, called 911, and grabbed his fire extinguisher to help. By the time he got there, the entire garage was engulfed in flames. He couldn't even get close enough to attempt a rescue. Fire department arrived within 5 minutes, but it took them another 10 minutes to get the fire under control enough to enter the garage. Donald didn't survive the initial blast. The medical examiner determined he died from the combination of blast trauma and immediate severe burns. The fire investigators' report was brutal in its simplicity. Victim ignited cigarette in the presence of gasoline vapors from open fuel tank. Explosion and fire resulted. Death was instantaneous following blast and thermal injury. The investigator later told local news, "This is why we have safety protocols. This is why you never smoke around gasoline." The victim was a trained mechanic who absolutely knew better. This wasn't ignorance, this was fatal complacency. The garage was a total loss. The motorcycle Donald was restoring? Melted scrap. All his tools? Destroyed. His house suffered smoke and fire damage. Insurance initially refused to pay because the fire was caused by willful negligence. Gasoline fumes are explosively flammable. An empty gas tank is actually a bomb waiting for an ignition source. If you're working with fuel tanks, you follow the safety protocols. Drain completely, ventilate for 24+ hours, no ignition sources within 50 feet minimum. Also, smoking near gasoline isn't just dangerous, it's suicidal. The warning labels exist for a reason. Every gas station has no smoking signs the size of your car. This applies to garages too. Your nicotine craving can wait until you're nowhere near explosive vapors. Story number 2. The Kite Rescue Electrocution. Moving to Cincinnati, Ohio, 2011, for a story that starts innocent and ends with high-voltage tragedy. Meet Jake, a 19-year-old who was flying a kite with some friends in a park on a breezy spring afternoon. Wholesome activity, right? Just some young adults enjoying the weather, nothing dangerous about flying a kite. Everything was going fine until a strong gust of wind snapped the kite string. The kite went sailing through the air and got tangled in the power lines running along the edge of the park. Not the kite itself touching the lines, but the string wrapped around the utility pole about 20 feet up. Now, a reasonable person's thought process would be, "That sucks. I just lost a $15 kite. Oh well, I'll buy another one." Jake's thought process was, "I can totally climb up there and get it back." His friends immediately told him this was a terrible idea. "Dude, it's just a kite. Let it go, man. Those are power lines. Are you crazy?" But Jake was determined. He looked at the utility pole and figured it was just like climbing a tree. He'd climbed plenty of trees as a kid. How different could it be? Extremely different. Lethally different. Utility poles carry electrical distribution lines, typically between 4,000 and 35,000 volts, depending on the area. They're clearly marked with warning signs. They have metal steps for utility workers who wear insulated gear and safety equipment. Those steps are not for public use. Jake started climbing. He made it about 15 feet up, using the metal foot pegs that utility workers use. His friends were yelling at him to come down, but Jake was focused on that kite. Here's what Jake didn't know. You don't even have to touch a power line to be electrocuted. At high voltage, electricity can arc through the air. If you get within a certain distance of a high voltage line, the current will jump to you, seeking a path to ground. That distance varies with voltage, but for distribution lines, it's typically about 1 foot, maybe 2 if conditions are dry. Jake was reaching for the kite string that was wrapped around wires carrying 12,500 volts. He got within about 18 inches of the lines. The electricity arced from the power line to Jake's outstretched hand. 12,500 volts hit his body, traveled through his nervous system, and exited through his feet, which were on metal steps attached to the wooden pole. At that voltage, death is instantaneous. His muscles contracted violently from the current. He was literally locked onto the pole by his own involuntary muscle contractions, being electrocuted continuously. Then his body fell. The current broke and gravity took over. He fell 20 feet to the ground, landing on concrete. His friends were screaming, ran over to him. One of them started CPR while another called 911, but Jake was already gone. The voltage had stopped his heart immediately and caused catastrophic damage to his nervous system. Paramedics arrived within 4 minutes. They tried to revive him, but there was nothing they could do. The medical examiner listed cause of death as electrocution via contact with high-voltage electrical distribution system, with a contributing factor of blunt force trauma from fall. The utility company had to shut down power to that section to safely recover his body and retrieve what was left of the kite. The kite, by the way, was worth about $12. It had Jake's name written on it in marker. Cincinnati police released a statement afterward. Utility poles are not playground equipment. The warning signs are there for a reason. This young man lost his life trying to retrieve a kite worth less than $20. No object is worth climbing a utility pole. If something gets stuck on power lines or a utility pole, call the utility company. They have professionals with proper equipment and training. A $12 kite is not worth your life. Actually, nothing that gets stuck on a power line is worth your life. Let it go. Buy a new one. Stay alive. Story number 3. The Fire-Breathing Fail. Heading to Orlando, Florida, 2019 for a story about why professional fire breathers use very specific fuels and why amateurs absolutely should not attempt this. Meet Brandon, a 24-year-old at a backyard party who had watched one too many circus performances and YouTube videos. Brandon had seen fire-breathing acts before, where performers spray fuel from their mouth across a torch, creating a dramatic fireball. It looks cool. It's a legitimate performance art. Professional fire breathers train for years and use very specific fuels like lamp oil or paraffin, substances that burn but don't explode. Brandon decided he could do this at a party with no training using gasoline. Let me repeat that. Gasoline. For those who don't know the chemistry, lamp oil and paraffin burn relatively slowly and predictably. Gasoline is a low flashpoint fuel that ignites explosively and burns at extremely high temperatures. Professional fire breathers would never, ever use gasoline. Brandon didn't know this, didn't care to research it, and figured fuel is fuel. The party was in full swing. Brandon announced he was going to do something awesome. He grabbed a red Solo cup, went to someone's lawnmower, and siphoned some gasoline into the cup, maybe 2 ounces. He told everyone to step back and get their phones ready to record. People were filming. This was going to be epic content. Brandon took a mouthful of gasoline, already a horrifically bad idea because gasoline is toxic, held a lighter in his hand, and prepared to spray the gasoline across the flame to create a fireball. The moment he flicked that lighter while the gasoline was still in his mouth, the gasoline vapor ignited. Not the spray, not the dramatic fireball he was imagining. The gasoline vapor in his mouth, throat, and around his face ignited all at once. Brandon's mouth and throat were on fire, but it gets worse. When gasoline ignites in your mouth, you reflexively inhale. Brandon inhaled flames and burning gasoline vapor directly into his lungs. He collapsed immediately, gasping, his face and neck burning. His friends tried to help. Someone threw water on him, which did almost nothing because gasoline fires don't extinguish easily with water. Someone grabbed a jacket and tried to smother the flames. By the time someone ran inside to call 911, Brandon was in critical condition. His face, neck, mouth, throat, and lungs all had severe burns. The gasoline had caused chemical burns to his mouth and esophagus even before it ignited. Paramedics arrived and immediately called for an airlift to the nearest burn center. Brandon was conscious but couldn't speak. His throat and airway were too damaged. He was trying to breathe, but his lungs had been seared by the inhaled flames. He was intubated at the scene and airlifted to Orlando Regional Medical Center's burn unit. Despite aggressive treatment, the combination of airway burns, lung damage, and chemical poisoning from the gasoline was too severe. Brandon died 3 days later. His lungs had sustained 4th-degree burns internally, damage so severe that tissue was completely destroyed. He also had chemical pneumonia from the gasoline exposure and severe facial burns. The medical examiner's report stated death resulted from inhalation injury and thermal burns sustained during attempted fire-breathing performance using gasoline as fuel. Manner of death? Accident. Multiple people at the party filmed the incident. The videos show Brandon announcing his plan, people cheering, then the sudden ignition, the screaming, the chaos. Those videos were never posted publicly, but were turned over to authorities. A professional fire breather later commented on the incident for a local news story. Fire breathing is extremely dangerous even when done correctly with proper training and proper fuel. Using gasoline is suicidal. It's so volatile that it will ignite before you even get a chance to spray it. This young man essentially turned his mouth into an explosion chamber. No amount of YouTube views is worth this. One of the paramedics who responded said, "We see these kinds of stunts increasingly often because of social media. People watch professionals do dangerous things and think they can replicate it without training or proper equipment. They can't. This is the result." Fire breathing is a professional performance art that requires years of training and specific non-explosive fuels. Gasoline should never be anywhere near your mouth for any reason. It's toxic to ingest and explosively flammable. If professionals use lamp oil instead of gasoline, there's a reason. Don't attempt dangerous stunts you've seen online without proper training, equipment, and understanding of the risks. Also, if your party trick involves putting flammable liquid in your mouth and lighting it on fire, maybe reconsider your life choices. There are easier ways to impress people that don't involve third-degree burns to your internal organs. Story number 4. The DIY Bungee Disaster. Portland, Oregon, 2016. This next one is a perfect example of why extreme sports companies spend millions on equipment testing and safety protocols. Meet Connor, a 22-year-old adrenaline junkie who loved watching extreme sports videos. Base jumping, bungee jumping, cliff diving. If it involved falling from heights with minimal safety equipment, Connor was into it. Connor wanted to try bungee jumping. A professional bungee jump at a legitimate facility costs about $100 to $200. Connor thought, why pay that when I can do it myself for free? Connor's plan was simple. Find a bridge over water, tie some rope to himself, tie the other end to the bridge railing, and jump. What could go wrong? Everything. Literally everything. First, Connor didn't use bungee cords. He used regular rope from a hardware store, the kind you use to tie down cargo, not the kind designed to stretch and absorb the shock of a falling human body. Second, he didn't calculate the rope length properly. Professional bungee jumping operations use complex formulas based on the jumper's weight, the cord's elasticity, and the height of the jump. Connor's calculation method looks about right. Connor found a bridge that was about 80 feet above the Willamette River. He bought 100 feet of nylon rope, the thick kind, rated for 1,200 pounds. Strong rope, not elastic rope, just rope. He tied one end around the bridge railing using what he thought was a secure knot. He tied the other end around his waist using another knot he found on YouTube. His friends were there filming. They tried to talk him out of it. "Dude, this seems really dangerous. Maybe we should just go to a real bungee place. That rope doesn't look like it stretches." Connor was confident. He'd watched dozens of bungee jumping videos. He knew what he was doing. Or so he thought. Connor climbed over the bridge railing, stood at the edge, looked at the camera, gave a thumbs up, and jumped. For the first second, everything seemed fine. Connor was falling, arms spread, screaming with excitement. Then physics entered the chat. Bungee cord are elastic. They stretch to absorb the impact of your fall, gradually slowing you down before pulling you back up. Regular rope doesn't stretch. It just stops you, suddenly, violently. Connor fell about 50 feet before the rope ran out of slack. The rope didn't stretch to slow him down, it just went taut instantly. The force was catastrophic. The sudden deceleration created something like 2,000 pounds of force on the rope and on Connor's body. The rope snapped. Not at the railing where it was tied, at Connor's waist where the knot was. Connor was suddenly in free fall again, now only 30 feet above the water, spinning from the whiplash of the rope breaking. He hit the water at approximately 40 miles per hour. Water might look soft, but at that speed, it's like hitting concrete. His friends on the bridge were screaming. Someone called 911 immediately. Others ran down to the riverbank to try to help. Connor surfaced briefly, clearly in distress, then went under. His friends who could swim jumped in to try to reach him, but the current was strong and Connor was unresponsive. It took rescue divers 20 minutes to find him downstream. He was pulled from the water and transported to the hospital, but he never regained consciousness. He died 2 days later from traumatic brain injury caused by the impact with the water. The autopsy also revealed that even if he'd survived the fall, the initial jolt when the rope went taut had caused severe spinal damage. The sudden stop had compressed his spine violently enough to fracture vertebrae. The police investigation found that Connor had used completely inappropriate equipment. The rope had zero elasticity. The knots were inadequate for the forces involved. The drop calculation was completely wrong. Even if the rope had held, the jolt would have caused severe injury. A professional bungee jumping operator later commented, "Commercial bungee cords are specifically designed to stretch 3 to 4 times their length under load. They're tested to thousands of cycles. We calculate drop distance to within inches based on weight and conditions." This young man used hardware store rope that has zero stretch. The rope snapping probably saved him from even worse spinal injuries from the initial shock load. This wasn't bungee jumping, this was just falling off a bridge with extra steps. Extreme sports are expensive for a reason. The equipment is specialized, tested, and certified for safety. You cannot replicate professional bungee jumping with hardware store rope. Bungee cords and regular rope are fundamentally different materials with completely different properties. If your cost-saving DIY plan involves replacing $500 of specialized safety equipment with $20 of rope from Home Depot, you're not being clever, you're being suicidal. Also, if you're attempting something where professional operators require waivers, insurance, and extensive safety protocols, maybe that's a sign that this isn't something you should DIY. Pay the $20. Use professional equipment. Stay alive. Story number 5. The TikTok car surfing tragedy. Last, but absolutely not least, we're heading to Atlanta, Georgia, 2020, for a story that perfectly encapsulates how social media has made people do increasingly dangerous things for temporary internet fame. Meet Javon, a 19-year-old high school senior who was really into TikTok. Not just watching videos, Javon wanted to be TikTok famous. He wanted the viral video that would get millions of views, make him an influencer, get him sponsored. Javon had seen videos of car surfing, where people ride on the hood or roof of a moving car. It looks dangerous and cool, which is exactly why it gets views. Car surfing has been around for decades. It's always been stupid and dangerous. But now with social media, people aren't just doing it for fun, they're doing it for content, which means they take bigger risks to make the video more impressive. Javon's plan was simple. Have his friend drive the car at moderate speed through a neighborhood while Javon rode on the hood, filming himself with his phone, just like the videos he'd seen with millions of views. His friend Marcus was also 19, also wanted to be TikTok famous, also thought this was a great idea. They started in a quiet residential neighborhood. Marcus drove slowly at first, maybe 15 miles per hour, while Javon sat on the hood, filming himself talking to the camera. "Yo, what's up, TikTok? We're doing some crazy stuff today." The video was boring, too slow, not exciting enough. Nobody goes viral with a car driving 15 miles per hour in a neighborhood. "Go faster, bro," Javon yelled. "We need this to look sick." Marcus accelerated, 25 miles per hour, 30 miles per hour. They were on a straightaway, no other cars around. Javon was standing up on the hood now, holding onto the windshield wipers for balance, phone in his other hand filming. Here's what they didn't account for. Even at 30 miles per hour, you're covering 44 feet per second. A car hood is smooth painted metal. Windshield wipers are not designed to support human weight, and physics doesn't care about your TikTok engagement metrics. Marcus hit a pothole, just a normal pothole, the kind you hit every day without thinking about it. In a car with your seatbelt on, you barely notice it. On the hood of a car traveling 30 miles per hour, that pothole became a launch ramp. The bump jolted Javon's feet off the hood. He tried to hold on to the windshield wipers, but they ripped right out of their mounts. Javon went airborne, tumbling forward over the roof of the car. He landed behind the moving vehicle, on the pavement, directly in the path of the rear wheels. Marcus saw Javon fall in his rearview mirror and slammed on the brakes, but at 30 miles per hour, a car needs about 45 feet to stop. Marcus was maybe 10 feet from Javon when he hit the brakes. The rear wheel rolled over Javon's chest and abdomen. Javon jumped out of the car screaming. Javon was on the ground, conscious, but making horrible, gurgling sounds. His chest was visibly crushed. He was trying to breathe, but couldn't. Marcus called 911, completely panicked, barely coherent. "My friend fell off my car and I ran him over. Please help. There's so much blood. He can't breathe." Neighbors heard the screaming and came out. One was a nurse who tried to help, but the injuries were too severe. Javon's ribs were shattered, his lungs were punctured, his liver was ruptured. Internal bleeding was catastrophic. Paramedics arrived within 4 minutes. They intubated Javon at the scene and rushed him to Grady Memorial Hospital's trauma center. He was in critical condition, needed emergency surgery immediately. Despite hours of surgery and massive transfusions, Javon died that night. The trauma was simply too extensive. The weight of the car rolling over his torso had crushed vital organs beyond repair. The medical examiner listed cause of death as blunt force trauma to chest and abdomen consistent with being run over by motor vehicle. Marcus was devastated, traumatized, and faced serious legal consequences. He was charged with vehicular manslaughter and reckless endangerment. He eventually pled guilty and served 2 years. Javon's phone was found at the scene, cracked but still functional. The TikTok video was still recording when he fell. It captured everything: Javon's excitement, the request to go faster, the pothole, the fall, and then just audio of the aftermath. Marcus screaming, Javon's gurgling breaths, sirens approaching. The video was never posted. It was used as evidence in the criminal case against Marcus. Atlanta police released a statement. Car surfing is illegal, extremely dangerous, and has resulted in numerous deaths and serious injuries. The temporary thrill and social media attention are not worth your life. This young man died attempting a stunt for a phone app. He was 19 years old, with his whole life ahead of him. A trauma surgeon who worked on Javon later said, "We see these social media stunt injuries increasingly often. TikTok challenges, YouTube stunts, Instagram dares, they're filling our trauma centers with young people who didn't understand that views and likes aren't worth dying for." This wasn't a freak accident. This was a predictable outcome of inherently dangerous activity. Javon's funeral was attended by over 200 people. His mother gave a speech asking young people to stop doing dangerous stunts for social media. "My son died for a video that was never even posted. He died for views he never got. He died for fame that didn't matter. Please, learn from his mistake. No amount of internet attention is worth your life." Car surfing is illegal for a very good reason. It's extraordinarily dangerous. You're riding on the outside of a vehicle designed to protect people on the inside. You have no seatbelt, no protection, and you're completely exposed to falls, impacts, and the wheels of the very vehicle you're riding on. Social media fame is temporary and meaningless. Viral videos are forgotten in days, but death is permanent. Your life is infinitely more worth than TikTok views. Also, if your content creation plan involves doing something illegal and dangerous, maybe reconsider your influencer strategy. There are millions of ways to get internet attention that don't involve riding on the hood of a moving car.